how to install a saddlebag lid protection from CruzArmor. Basically, you want to get everything good and clean. Make sure everything's wet around the area here so that no dust migrates up under the film. Make sure your hands are clean. We're going to take the kit, lay it down so you can see how it's going to lay on here so you get a good idea before you start. Then again, just make sure everything's good and wet. And as we peel this off, we want to make sure our hands are wet, the film is wet. Just the wetter the better. You don't want to pull this stuff off and have it too dry because there's adhesive right there and the dust will stick to it. If it folds over onto itself when it's dry, it'll stick to itself. So we're just going to go ahead and peel it off and spray it, make sure it's good and wet. And make sure this lid is good and wet. You want to make sure there's no dry areas whatsoever. Because we're really going to float. We're floating this piece on top of the water. You don't want any dry material touching dry bag lid at this time. Then you just kind of center it. Make sure that this top edge is about where that front edge of the film is. And then I'm just going to use the weight of the squeegee almost, just to start squeegeeing out down the center here. I'm not using too much force. If you use too much force, you'll actually pull the material and it'll slide on you until you get it tacked down a little bit. So right now, it's starting to tack a little bit. So you can still move it a little. So I'm going to go ahead and spray the top with soapy solution so that your squeegee will slide easier. And then just using overlapping strokes. I'm going from center, which we know the center is already squeegeed out, so we're just kind of moving along. Overlapping strokes, squeegee out all that soapy water. Again, I'm not aggressively pushing it, just lightly pushing all that stuff out right now. If your film just seems like it won't stop moving and it keeps moving, you may have too much soap in your slip solution, so you might need to dilute it with some water. Because at this point, it's pretty much like up front, it's not really moving. So we're good. Now what we're gonna do, I sprayed the top again. We're gonna now give it a little more aggressive stroke to move any of the water and moisture out, which now is pressing the adhesive down onto the lid itself. So there's no longer a floating barrier of soapy water. It's, again, directly on there. Now what you want to do is go ahead and just bring all these edges over. And what you'll find is if, what we call these are fingers, if they start popping up like that, that's where you would use the alcohol anchor mix. You spray that, and that will wash out the soap and allow the adhesive to tack down onto the lid. So you just move along, making sure to squeegee from the top around. Don't just go on the side because you'll leave air along the, or liquid along the actual ridge. So start on top and come over that lid. That looks pretty good. We got a finger we call here. So I'm gonna hit that with the alcohol. Again, anywhere that it seems to be popping up, just hit it with a little alcohol. So that's good on this side. So now we're gonna just do the same on the inside. So just basically going up and over. Making sure that it's all going down, laying down nicely. Again, if you see the little fingers, then we're gonna hit it with the alcohol. There's a little finger right here. Just give it a little alcohol and that will lock that down. time. There we go. Okay. Now what I do is take a dry towel. When you're going to wipe this down, wipe the same way that you were squeegeeing. You don't want to go against the grain or come up from the bottom, because you could literally lift, you know, or fold back that edge while it's still kind of wet, and then you're hitting the adhesive with your towel, and you could get some microfibers up underneath. So again, just kind of going the direction that you were going with the squeegee. If you see a finger pop up, just hit that with the alcohol. You know, look all the way around, make sure that everything looks good, which it does. So now we're going to move on to the front nose piece. Same process, we're going to make sure everything's good and wet. As we peel it, you want to make sure and keep it wet. Your fingers wet, everything good and wet. Again, wetter the better. Now we're going to lay that right here. And you're going to focus on this little corner right here. You're just going to move it until those two just lightly butt up against each other. And then you can go ahead and squeegee that. Now again, if that wants to move, you may need, it's still moving, but if we wanted to give a little alcohol, just to help it tack down right there, but you can kind of even feel. If you feel a lip, then that means you're overlapping it in some way. But those will butt right up against each other. You want to feel a nice smooth seam. There we go. Feels good. And you just work. You want to make sure that's up against there all the way across. I'm just gonna hit a little bit of alcohol right there so it doesn't move on me. And again, you can feel. If you don't feel a lip or a gap, then you are good to go. So that top is done. Now what we want to do is go ahead and make sure there's soap underneath here. What we have is a finger right here. So to get that finger out, basically all we need to do is pull it. See, when you pull, the finger disappears. So we'll put a little bit of alcohol down here on the bottom so that when we pull it, it will stay right here. So now that will stay. If it was soap, it would have slid back. So that's what that alcohol does. It just allows it to stay in place. Again, if you have any fingers popping up, you could hit it with alcohol, but we are good on this corner here. And then, again, you know this strip is done, you know this is done, so we're just gonna work our way out and down to this other corner where you see you got a little finger action going. So once again, we'll take our alcohol on that corner, wash out the soap, and then I'll grab it and pull it slightly. And you'll see when we pull it, those fingers disappear. You're actually stretching the material and stretching those fingers out. Now we got one little finger line up there. So again, anytime that you see those fingers, just alcohol them or stretch them away. There we go. So you're kind of stretch, and that's what pulled that down. So once again, we're going to start in the center with a dry towel, work our way out. Now that you got it on there, you don't want to it to pop up on you. And I see there's a little teeny liquid bubble there, so I'm just going to work that out of the top. Looks good. Again, go with the lines when you're wiping these down. And over here we had a couple little fingers that popped up. Not to worry, again, a little alcohol. Those are out. And with that, that thing is protected and good. If you have, like I say, any other fingers pop up, you know, I mean, you can either park it out in the sun, let it cure up a little bit, because the moisture is just trying to escape out the sides is what's happening. That's where those fingers pop up. So the alcohol, again, that seals it down so that can't happen. So that the liquid has to dissipate up through the surface, which takes a few days. You might see a little fogging. You might even see a couple little teeny liquid bubbles. As long as they're not white, then they're liquid. If you see a bump, that's liquid. Leave it alone and it'll dissipate out with the heat after a few days. If it's something white, that would be air, and that's gonna stay white. So if you see an air pocket that's white, you would want to go ahead and take your soapy solution, spray well, grab that, lift it up and spray under, and kind of lay that piece back down. The stuff's really forgiving as long as you keep everything wet. Even if you get a piece of dust or something under there, you can even lift that up, or a hair or something, you can lift it, wash it out. Don't scratch it out, because you could scratch the adhesive, mar the adhesive. Just use your fingers, wash it out, lay it back down. So that's a saddlebag kit protected, and that'll keep these things from getting beat to death. And if over time you ever get to where you've marred it up and just kicked the heck out of it with boots and actually scarred the material, you can just replace that one piece or just that front piece. And when you remove this down the road, when and if you ever need to, just make sure it's warm, pick it up and you pull, kind of tug of war to lift it off, and it won't leave adhesive. Clean it up, and put a new piece down, and it looks brand new. So enjoy CruzArmor Protection.